Inheritance, an Upper Earth novel, Chapter 8, The Devil's Cauldron. Hoggish grunts echoed in the darkness, mingling with high-pitched whistles. Screed was snoring. Hidden in a small chamber a good distance from the main tunnel, they had risked sleeping. Now Kath wondered how far away Screed's nasal serenade could be heard. She shifted her weight, taking care not to wake him. If I stole the firefly lamp, I could walk out of here. But what then? Which way would she go? The way back led to the Rockwhite, and the way on must lead to this mysterious hooded character that Screed feared so much. She turned the problem in more directions than a puzzle cube, but the answer was the same. If she escaped, she would be a shrimp in a pond full of hungry pike. Without a guide, there was no way she could get out of this place alive. For now, Screed was protecting her, and he had a nose for trouble. He would scent some creature in the tunnel, and as quick as thieves, they'd be off down another passage. At first, Kath had taken all his stories for make-believe, but after their attack by the Rockwhite, she was persuaded that anything could be lurking down here. But who is this hooded one, and what does he want with me? She tried getting information out of Screed, but each time she mentioned the subject, his lips closed tight as a clam. Maybe he wasn't even real. Maybe Screed had made him up. Maybe. The grunts and whistles stopped. She heard Screed muttering and fumbling in the darkness. Then his wide, pock-marked face loomed large in the glow of the firefly lamp. "Good morning, Catherine," he said, cheerful, as though it was the most natural thing in the world to wake up in a hole in the ground. "Breakfast?" He pulled a half-eaten bag of bread from his sack and offered it to her. But through the dirty cellophane wrappings she spied a furry blanket of mould. Kath wrinkled her nose and turned from the sight of it. "I can't eat that," she said. "It's green and mouldy. I'll be sick." "Can't be hungry then, otherwise you'd eat without wondering what it looks like." Screed shrugged his shoulders and ripped off half a slice of bread with his teeth. He chewed with his mouth open, sucking and smacking his lips together as he swallowed. The mouse scurried around Screed's booted feet, clearing the scattering of crumbs from the ground. Kath was trying hard to block out the noise when a sound caught her attention from outside their hiding place. She listened hard. There it was again. A small scrabbling sound. She elbowed Screed and cupped a hand around her ear to indicate that he should listen too. To enter the chamber, they had climbed up a small scree slope. Someone or something was now on that slope. They saw its nose first, a quivering grey nose. Screed's fingers whipped out so fast that he caught the creature unawares. His hand held its neck firmly, while its fat body and tail kicked in all directions. It produced a pitiful squeak as it struggled frantically to escape. There, a quick snap and it won't hurt any more. The fattest rat I ever ate, I'll be bound." He was trying to get a good grip with his other hand, but its body was as big as a cat's, and wriggled in every direction to avoid him. "Stop!" shouted Kath. "You'll hurt it." The force of her cry seemed to take him by surprise. His hold on the animal loosened, and it succeeded in prizing its head free. Pandemonium followed. In the confines of the small chamber, Screed chased after the creature, which bounced off the walls in its desperation to avoid capture. At the same time, Kath did her best to block Screed and shield the animal. Finally, the creature found its way into the adjacent tunnel and hopped off at speed. "What did you do that for? That could have been me lunch," he wailed. I'm partial to a nice rat, especially a big fat one like that. It wasn't a rat, Kath said, furious with Screed. And even if it was, I wouldn't want you to kill it. Not kill it? How are we supposed to eat without killing? You're flipping balmy, you. I'm not balmy, I'm vegetarian, Kath replied. I don't eat meat, and anyway, it's cruel to kill animals. Screed held his head in his hands and continued muttering. Vegetarian, she says. Might as well blimmin' starve to death. Veggie-blimmin-tarian. The muttering went on and on and on. Kath began by ignoring it, but after a few miles of walking with Screed's incessant griping, she couldn't take any more. She sat down on the tunnel floor and wouldn't budge. I'm not going anywhere until you stop moaning, she announced. And just who's giving the orders round here? Screed asked, an ominous look on his face. I don't care, Kath insisted. I'm not moving an inch until you stop all this whinging. Screed rolled his eyes upwards. All right already, I'll stop. Though I don't rightly know what I should let a female boss us about. Kath arched her brows and made a zipping motion with her fingers across her mouth. Screed pursed his lips together tightly. Then, with a loud snort, he began walking, finally silent. Kath could feel a smile pulling at the corners of her mouth. 1-0 to Kath. I'll get out of this yet. She was just about to move off when she heard a slight shuffling behind her. A grey nose was visible just beyond a bend in the tunnel. The rat that was too big to be a rat was following them. Kath couldn't believe her eyes. After turning a sharp bend in the tunnel, they came to a massive wooden structure. How can a portcullis be way down here underground? 2 sentries stood next to the gate, with swords hanging from their waists. Dark robes covered their bodies, and only their eyes were visible through the eye slits of their elongated helmets. She'd heard of the Dark Ages, but she'd never thought she would actually come face to face with it. As Screed and Kath approached, the guards' eyes followed them, but otherwise they made no sound or movement. Open up, shouted Screed. I'm one of the Hooded One's servants, and I'm bringing a visitor. Who's out there? Bellowed a voice from within. Behind the grill of the portcullis, a gigantic figure appeared. Bent over as he was under the low roof of the passage, it was difficult to know exactly how tall he stood. He must be 10 feet tall at least, Kath guessed. Oversize, like the rest of his body, the giant's head looked twice the size of any normal man's head. Across his skull and face, a myriad of tattoos swelled and rippled as though alive. A giant, Kath thought. How can this be real? Giants don't exist. Oh, it's Screed, is it? The giant said on seeing them at the gate. The inky lines above his eyes came together as meandering streams. And who's that with you? I already told you, Piers, answered Screed in a sing-song voice. A visitor. A visitor? Screed, you creeping maggot. You know we don't have visitors here. We only have long-termers. His laughter boomed through the tunnel. All right, through you come. He turned a wheel inside, and the iron spikes at the base of the portcullis rose steadily, until they were high above Kath's head. Somehow, Kath had thought they were never really going to arrive anywhere, that she would eventually manage to persuade Screed to let her go. In her head, old Hoodie had become an imaginary person that didn't exist. And yet here they were, entering some underground gateway filled with people. Screed wasn't making it up. It's all true. The bubble she'd cocooned herself in had burst. It was a huge effort to make her feet work and propel her body through the gate. Then the portcullis dropped, and her heart dropped with it. Trapped. On the other side, the passages were no longer formed from natural rock and soil. Here, cut stone lined the walls, and her feet walked across cobbles, as though a medieval fortress had been built into the ground. They trudged through a long corridor and past another gate, this time made of iron. Beyond, at the end of a short passage, an extremely officious-looking man was perched on a ridiculously high chair, with a wooden desk before him. He reminded Kath of a vicar standing before a pulpit, but from the side his dangling legs gave him a comical air. "Name?" he barked, without looking up. He held a feathered quill, which was poised over a heavy ledger on his desk. Screed seemed disgruntled by this formality. "My name was Screed last time I came through here, and it ain't changed since, Albert Wimple." The man peered down his long pointed nose at Screed, as though to check his identity. "Screed," he repeated methodically. "Business?" Screed appeared to grow in stature. It was the first time Kath had ever seen him making such an effort to stand up straight. "I'm returning from a mission. Yeah, that's right, a mission." Then, as an afterthought, he added, "For the hooded one." The shadow of a smirk passed over the bookkeeper's face. He then resumed a businesslike expression, before beckoning to Kath to come forward. "Name?" "Kath," she said. "Full name," he insisted. "Catherine Smith," she pronounced in a louder voice. She hated her second name. It was a reminder of her nothingness, in a world full of people that meant something. It wasn't her real name, just one the authorities had given her. Whoever abandoned her as a baby hadn't even bothered naming her. To Kath, Smith was the most ordinary name a person could have. "Business?" The bookkeeper was staring at her expectantly, but Kath had no idea what to say. "Captive? Kidnapped? Prisoner? Take your pick." "Visiting the hooded one," Screed squeaked from behind her, desperately trying to peer over her shoulder, which was impossible given his height or distinct lack of it. The bookkeeper's eyebrows raised a smidgen, but he said nothing. His quill worked slowly and precisely across the page, with an annoying scratching sound, forcing them to stand and wait. He rang a small handbell, which brought a slobbering, lopsided man from a side room. Around his waist hung an enormous set of keys, which jangled rhythmically with his limp. A grunt in their direction served as a signal that they should follow. At the far end of the corridor, he opened a solid iron door. Kath gasped with surprise. Through the door, sunlight flooded in. For a moment, she couldn't see clearly. How is it possible? We went deeper and deeper underground. We can't be back at the surface now. As she walked towards the door, she glimpsed a patch of blue sky, and birdsong filled her ears. At the threshold, she paused to take in the sight before her. They were high up, looking over a ravine with a river at its base. The gateman grunted at her and gestured for her to step forwards. "All right, I'm moving," she muttered. She stepped outside, dizzy with the explosion of sensations around her. Dazzling sunlight, the breeze against her skin, and the exhilaration of being high up. A hand grabbed her arm. "You fall," Screed warned, "and we'll be scraping you off the rocks like raspberry jam." A set of stone steps, broad enough to take only one person, hugged the side of the gorge. No wall or railing ran down the outer edge. The only support came from a chain strung through iron rings anchored into the ravine's side. Kath descended the first steps, keeping a grip on the chain and squeezing tightly against the inner side. On the far side of the gorge, lower down, lay a walled city, reachable using a bridge. Kath had never seen a bridge like that before. Made of stone, it was broad enough for small houses to perch on it in a higgledy-piggledy way. "Home, sweet blimmin' home," Screed said, as he negotiated his way down the steep steps. At the bottom, they were immediately targeted by a handful of people plying their wares. "Hagstones, 3 dunkets," shouted a short, stout man on her left. "Guaranteed to protect your sleep." "Want a talisman, sweetheart? It'll keep the bad spirits away," an old woman crooned. More offers came from every direction. If the objects sold were strange, the people's clothes were even stranger. A young woman before her wore a full-length dress with a tightly laced bodice and a cloak hung around her shoulders. The men were invariably dressed in tight-fitting trousers, with long overshirts or jackets. The materials and cut of their clothes looked coarse, like they had been handmade. "Get away with you, vermin," Screed snapped. "Right rich that is, coming from a snivelling rat like you," a voice piped up. With a sour look on his face, Screed pulled Kath away. "Never mind them. Trash of the earth, they are. It's through the city gates for us." "But what is this city?" asked Kath. "They call it the Devil's Cauldron," said Screed. "And you need to watch your step here, Catherine." On each side of the city gate, columns 50 feet high were decorated with snakes and dragons and wolves, while 2 menacing stone gargoyles stared down from above. Kath paused and squinted up at them, shielding her eyes from the sun. The gates stood open, but 2 more sentries eyed them as they passed through. On entering the city, Screed and Kath crossed what must have been the town square. Kath's eyes were wide as she tried to take in everything around her. The place was like a giant carnival. In one corner, costumed actors amused boisterous spectators with a play. Further along, juggling artists and acrobats competed for the crowd's attention and money. On the opposite side of the square, couples clothed in brilliant hues danced in formal lines, twirling in time to a fiddler's music. There were few poor people here, she realised. Though long dresses and cloaks were worn, here they were made of richer materials, such as silk or lace or fur. The more she looked, the more Kath saw an opportunity. This is it. If I'm going to get away, it has to be now. She'd lived on the streets of Birmingham for nearly 3 years. If she could survive there, she could survive anywhere. She just needed to get away from Screed. She waited for him to wander a few paces ahead of her, feigning interest in a man on stilts with wide diamond-patterned trousers and a long-nosed mask, though she must have stared too hard because he noticed her and stared right back. "What's this? A young admirer?" he cooed. Idiot! Why had she drawn attention to herself? Screed had turned and was waiting now. The man on stilts tilted his head quizzically, looking from her to Screed and back again. Below his half-mask, the lower part of his face transformed into a grin, and his stick legs wandered awkwardly across her path. For the briefest moment, Kath was confused. Was he intentionally blocking her way? But the stick man didn't appear to be paying attention to her. From his deep, baggy pockets, he conjured yellow juggling balls and his hands worked effortlessly to keep them in the air. Then came a wink. It had been directed at her, she was sure, and with the wink came understanding. Positioned as he was, the stick man was shielding her from Screed's view. She ran. Dodging through the gaps in the crowd, she hoped to disappear within the forest of bodies. But it proved more difficult than she'd imagined. She was dressed differently, and her tight black jeans and leather jacket made her stand out. Not to mention her dyed black hair and nose piercing. Whichever direction she ran in, people around her stared and backed away, making her the centre of attention. At the closest corner of the square, Kath spotted an alley and pelted towards it. In the narrowness of the passage, high buildings created walls against the bright sunlight above, making it a dark and sunless place. At first it appeared deserted, but as she ventured further into the shadows, she stumbled over an old woman sitting on a doorstep. Kath was desperate to find a friendly face, but the old crone's face was wizened and haggard, and her cackling roused another creature from a darkened doorway. It stood on 2 legs, but Kath had the queerest impression that this thing wasn't human. She backed up, keeping her eyes on the alley creature, but whenever she took a step of retreat, the thing advanced towards her, and it was becoming bolder with every step. "As long as I hold its gaze, it won't attack," she told herself. She was wrong. She was only midway to the alley entry when it crouched on all fours, readying itself to leap. Then it charged. She had no time to even turn and run. The thing was nearly upon her. As it came at her, Kath saw canine fangs and a hairy muzzle below yellow eyes. When it pounced, the only thought in her head was that it looked exactly like a werewolf. A crack cut through the air like a gunshot, halting the beast's charge. Then Screed was next to her, a whip in his hand. The creature backed off, hanging its head like a scalded dog. "Bleeding lycanthropes, blimmin' nuisance they are." He threatened another crack of the whip, and the creature slipped back into the shadows. "And good riddance too," pronounced Screed for added effect. "Like I told you," he growled, "there are worse things than me down here. Stick close by from now on."